we're pouring water into a bathtub that has a giant hole ripped in the bottom.
Welcome back to New Hampshire.
Thanks, it's great to be back. After my company was sold in 2009, it was a very tough time for the country. It was the financial crisis aftermath. And I'd seen all these whiz kids heading to Wall Street and Silicon Valley, and I thought it'd be great if they went and did something better than that. But you can't just be negative and complain about something. So I quit my job. I started an organization called Venture for America to help train hundreds of entrepreneurs in places like Providence, Detroit, Cleveland, St. Louis, Baltimore, and helped create several thousand jobs over the next 5 or 6 years. And I became convinced that the reason why Donald Trump's our president today is that we automated away 4 million manufacturing jobs in Michigan, Ohio, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Missouri, Iowa, all the swing states he needed to win. And my friends in Silicon Valley, and I have a bunch of them, know that we're about to do the same thing to millions of retail jobs, call center jobs, fast food jobs, and most disastrously, truck driving jobs in the years to come. And so this is the fourth industrial revolution. We're in the third inning of the greatest economic and technological transformation in the history of the country. Donald Trump is the symptom. He's the manifestation. And so I'm running for president because we need to wake up Americans to the fact that it is not immigrants that are causing economic problems. It is the fact that technology has advanced our economy to a point where more Americans are having trouble finding meaningful paths forward. And then as a Democratic Party, we need to propose meaningful solutions to help address the problems that got Donald Trump elected. So as much as I love my kids and my family, this seemed a lot more important. And so I said, you know what, I can take this message to the American people and hopefully start to solve some of these problems and improve people's lives.
It's not something that people intuitively suspect could be a real issue either. It's one of the ones where you kind of have to go shake people, like, hey, look at this. This is coming. There's a cliff. We're going towards this cliff.
It's darker still in that. So when I was digging into the numbers, I found that it's not this cliff that we're heading towards. It's actually more of a curve that we're on. What I've been telling people is that we're in the third inning now, where one of the main reasons why Donald Trump won in 2016 is that we automated away 4 million manufacturing jobs that were based in Michigan, Pennsylvania, Ohio, Wisconsin, Missouri, Iowa, all the swing states he needed to win in the center of the country. And a lot of that was just manufacturing work. And if you go to a factory, you'll see it's just giant robot arms as far as the eye can see. So it's not just that you have artificial intelligence on the horizon. It's that we've been eating away at the most common jobs in the U.S. economy for almost 20 years now. And it's just now hitting a point where it's pushing more and more unskilled men in particular out of the workforce. I got turned on to that really by Donald Trump winning in 2016. Where I saw that happen and it just shocked me into action, honestly. And I'll say the opposite of Donald Trump is an Asian guy who likes numbers. And what we need to do is we need to take Donald Trump and then swing it the other direction. He wants to freeze time and turn the clock backwards. We need to turn the clock forwards, and that's what I'm going to do.
But a lot of people don't address it. They act like technology and automation is a great thing and we're going to hire people who are going to control the automation. But in reality, a lot of people will be out of jobs.
And you see that coming?
Oh, it's not just coming. It's already been happening. And if you look at the numbers, we lost 4 million manufacturing jobs to automation over the last number of years. And if you go to Detroit or Cleveland or St. Louis, you see the aftermath. And I studied economics in college. And so according to economic theory, all those workers would get retrained, reskilled, find new jobs, and all would be well. But then when you actually go to the communities, you see that about half of them left the workforce and never worked again. And of that group, about half filed for disability. Then you saw a massive surge in alcohol use and drug overdoses,
depression,
and suicides and depression. And so there's a lot of despair, a lot of suffering, and it's going unaddressed around the country. And unfortunately, it's just going to ramp up. So one of the things I'm trying to tell people is look, this is no longer speculative. This is not we should keep our eye on this. This has been ripping a hole in our communities and our society for years now, and it's about to pick up steam.
What's the hardest part of selling this? Because I believe you're the only candidate for president this year who is openly in support. I think you're starting to have some impact on other candidates that are not dismissing it. How about that? But you're the only one, I think, that's saying, guys, this is a big deal and this is a big idea for a big solution. How's the salesmanship process going and what's the hardest part thus far of making the sale?
Well, you know, it's fun. I mean, most Americans are just tuning in. They're not like you all in New Hampshire where they're avidly paying attention to, to 2020. But I just tell Americans like what we're going through as a country. Our life expectancy has declined for the last 3 years because of a surge in drug overdoses and suicides. Our labor force participation rate is at 63.2%, the same level as Ecuador and Costa Rica, and almost 1 in 5 prime working age American men hasn't worked in the last year. So we have these rosy stats that obscure the dark reality, and Donald Trump ran on the reality, and the reality actually has not changed that much during the last 2 years. So when you talk about the salesmanship, it's again just trying to draw attention to what people are actually experiencing. And to me, it's up to the Democratic Party to again enact meaningful solutions to the problems that got Donald Trump elected, instead of just dismissing those concerns of tens of millions of Americans.
The very few candidates, I would say no other candidate, has as much detail on his or her website as you do. I'm not sure what you're up to in terms of
Policy number?
Yeah, what's the number now? You're at many, many dozens at this point.
Yeah, we're at something like 75, and we're gonna release another like 25 or so in the next month. We're gonna like release a policy a day, just because we have them. We've actually had them for a while. I think there's one reason why I like Steve, because Steve's also very wonky and likes policies. For those of you who've been to his events, I'm sure he but to me, again, we have to start focusing on real solutions for the American people, instead of arguing in symbols and various like wars of words or cultural messages. I don't think that's what Americans are looking for at this point. Like, if I gave you $1,000 a month, it probably would not make a big difference in the economy, because it would just go into your account somewhere and nothing would happen. But we all know that right now most Americans are living paycheck to paycheck. 57% of Americans can't afford an unexpected $500 bill. So you put $1,000 a month into their hands, it's going to go right back into the economy. They're going to spend it on food, childcare, car repairs they've been putting off, the occasional night out. And then all of those businesses end up hiring more people, and then we end up getting some of the money back as tax revenues. America's heading towards being majority-minority in 2045, so that's 27 years from now. What you would expect to happen is for the shrinking white majority to become more and more nostalgic for the past and feel culturally threatened and insecure. And then you add into that the fact that their economic insecurity is going up and up, because we're getting rid of the truck driving jobs, the retail jobs, the manufacturing jobs. And so that's going to manifest itself as a lot of racial hostility. And then if you think, what would you expect to happen in the beginning, in like the third inning of that? You'd expect maybe Donald Trump, maybe a rise of racism, maybe like outbreaks of shootings and violence, all of which are happening. All of this stuff is unfortunately consistent with a narrative of this country disintegrating over the next 30 years as it becomes more diverse.
Dude, you just painted a super bleak picture of the future.
And then you have this liberal narrative which puts everything under the umbrella of racism. Right. It's like, if things are going badly, then it's racism. And then if you're a poor white, you're looking up being like, how the heck am I racist? Like, I'm just like trying to put food on the table.
Maybe I grew up in a town where literally just geographically there are no minorities. Looking at it like, how could I be racist when I didn't even meet a minority?
That if someone can't pay their bills, that mindset of scarcity reduces their functional IQ by 13 points, which is 1 standard deviation.
When you were 20 years ago, you were 24 years old.
Yeah. 10
years ago, 34 years old. I know you mentioned earlier you didn't think you'd be running for president. What'd you think you'd be doing at 44 years old?
So when I was 34, 24, when I was 24, I was just, I was like hating my law firm job, being like, oh man, I have to find something I'm excited about. And then when I was 34, I was CEO of a growth company that was doing quite well. And then it had just been sold. And then I was driven by the fact that it seemed to me like all the energy of the country was doing a few things in a few places when it needed to be starting businesses in more communities around the country. And so I thought at the time, I love this country dearly. My parents came here as immigrants and created a great life for me and my brother. And so I was like, well, this is my opportunity to give back. And I just felt like I could do something when I started Venture for America. I did not realize that the problems in this country were so big, so hairy, and they're about to accelerate and take off. Like right now, the 20th century economic relationships that so many of us have taken for granted for years are breaking down. and our system does not know what to do.